Good evening, Peakwood. For those that don't know me, my name is Charles Parsons, and for those that do, they call me Chucky. I thought I'd address this matter at hand as it's been quite a difficult task. And the residents have actually asked me to address this matter. As for many, on Tuesday, your phones lit up, whether it was a screen grab or actual messages, a phone call, which filtered through to the residents group. I've always said I'm like the ham in the sandwich, because if a resident unnecessarily bashes the HOA, I'm the first to rectify that, as honestly we don't need unnecessarily bashing of HOA. It's a tough job. But I've also always said to the HOA, in the event that I feel that they've done something wrong, I will simultaneously address them for that. I have always tried to be fair and impartial. I used to have regular meetings with the late de Villiers, or quarterly meetings. That way I could address concerns of residents, find out what's on the cards, and see what's in the pipeline for the future. That way I could be proactive instead of being reactive as I am in this situation. We do think that the HOA handled this matter very poorly. And from what I understand, it was one director that decided to pull the plaster off, even though it was against what the owners want and what was discussed. I've always kept my position of not attacking the HOA, especially when there's serious issues. Well, then we have to address it. And that is the reason that I ran the voting poll. The voting poll showed 201 votes, 198 against the removal of JJ, 2 for the removal of JJ, which those 2 were very concerning to me. And obviously only 1 saying that they would like weekend medical support. So I believe this plaster was pulled off and he was given 2 weeks notice. And I think that that's what upsets Peakwood, and why they keep pushing that matter, and why it's been discussed at every table, on WhatsApp, on Telegram, and phone calls. People are very upset about it. I think that the SMS communication, I think what upsets them even more is that the SMS came out and said that this has not been true, this is untrue, and that he has not been terminated and they will get back to us. Well, the owners have now been asked, the owners of Peakwood have now asked HOA to please remove yourself from this matter. In fact, step back from this matter. Because as we've seen in the past, when somebody goes in the firing line, within months that person is gone, whether the owner called or whatever. We have lost a few good guys or employees, workers over issues, contentious issues. I would like to avoid that for JJ because he's valuable to us. To be crystal clear, JJ did not spill the beans. In fact, he was very tight-lipped. And the first time I phoned him, he didn't want to tell me as what was going on. Remember, JJ pays rent and in Peakwood, and he has to give notice to that owner who has a contract with him for 30 days. Also remembering, although the owner does not live in Peakwood, but also has many friends within Peakwood, and with social media, news travels very fast, and the information got out. So I think this is a lesson for HOA too. I think they need to realize that information is easily available, especially because of today's modern media. So regardless, any way you put it, it will come out. What I think that needs to be addressed is that I believe that HOA are really doing a great job. Believe me, I think they are doing, considering that they've got 800 homes, 800 owners, residents and tenants. And I think they are doing an exceptional job because believe me, it's one hell of a job to be done. But the instruction did come down from one of the directors, which was actually against what was agreed upon, and has to follow that rule and it was given to the estate manager to follow. And obviously, he has to follow the instruction of HIA, of course. However, I do believe we've got a fantastic new estate manager. I believe he's going to make fantastic changes. I believe he's going to improve our state. And I think the poor guy was given an instruction and put into a very tough and awkward situation at that time. But that instruction still came from a director. So I'm asking that director in question to respect the owners and to back off. And rather put this onto a schedule for the AGM so that we can address it correctly. Yeah, the facts. JJ had already started to negotiate his contract last year with the late De Villiers, and then obviously again this year repeatedly. He then went on to a month-to-month basis up to this point, and he did ask for an increase, and obviously because he pays rent within Peakenwood, that does go up. And staying in Peakenwood is closer to their residents in the event of an emergency. And having to, oxygen tanks, as you know, are a problem. Anybody that's in the medical field know that they've been a problem because of what's happened with COVID. The cost of oxygen's gone up, PPE's gone up. To give you an idea, it costs a guy over $3,000 to $4,000 every time he fills up his bag. And this service costs money to run. He doesn't get a weekend off. And even if he does get one, he has to pay somebody else to stand in for him that weekend. That means he doesn't get weekends to attend his own family, personal family related responsibilities, whether it is to take his kids or wife to go and get shopping. Not one weekend off. And if he does, he has to pay for somebody else to fill in that gap. In the defense of the HIA or finance, they have a fiduciary duty to keep an eye on the finances and are obligated to check around and get comparative quotes. And because at the end of the day, if they're overpaying for him, they will get pulled over the coals at the AGM for over expense and on why we spend too much. However, I think this particular director did not realize the loyalty JJ had or understand the necessity of having somebody an exceptional person on the estate. Not saying that he's the only, but he's doing a good job. Now, like all of us that have medical aids, we spend thousands on medical every month, so that in the event there's a situation, we are covered. For someone like me, I've got a few kids, I spend a fortune. I even do the top up because I would like to cover that. Now, like any medical, it's a combination of everybody. In the event of that emergency, it covers that cost. JJ is costing every household 62 Rand a month. The reality was asking for a 7 Rand a month increase, which then obviously led to the HIA starting to look for comparative quotes, rightfully, to ensure that we are being comparative. Unfortunately, not only did the director get quotes that were being, it was comparing apples with apples. It wasn't comparing apples with apples and Archies. But that director stood up and pulled the plaster off, and instead of investigating what Peakenwood wants, and again, we just didn't appreciate the denial of what happened. Because the reality, when I did my investigation and my own homework and started asking, it was what happened. And I need to be very clear. We did not get the leak from JJ. So I don't want him to be persecuted on this matter. The reality is that there's two ways to handle it. We could separate the actual expense, so drop our levies by 60 Rand a month, and we could have put on a line item on the bottom of our monthly expense, and we could address it on every AGM, as we do for voting for accounting service or so. We can vote for him, or if he wants to increase, or if we want to keep him on, or we could vote for another service. But this needs to be done correctly. That director that made that call I'm telling you directly that you've got to represent the owners, not oneself. You were voted in and you took the duty because you wanted to represent the owner's interests and you wanted to do right by the owners. Doing something like this is not representing the owners. And the Pekinwood will not tolerate this sort of behavior. In the event that you do something like this again, I don't think I need to tell you that Pekinwood will be definitely calling for your resignation. At the end of the day, you've got a responsibility to those owners and not your own interest. At the end of the day, if owners want to pay 60 Rand for a service, and yes, he only might do 20 to 30 calls for sick leave and leisure rentals, well, we get that. But then if there's an emergency, he's the first guy to life save a baby, an adult, a teenager. He has done this time and time again. And I personally would rather have somebody that is trustworthy and reliable that you can count on the time of need. I don't mind paying 67 Rand a month. And in fact, I don't even mind paying 80 Rand a month for him. All I care, because at the end of the day, it's me knowing that there is some medical support to us is priceless. It was always a concern when I first moved to Pekinwood that what happened if there was an issue and what do we do? And if I've been in that situation with young babies, I've been in that situation at that time where we got in, where they got very sickly, and we had to put them in a car and race them to Johannesburg because there was no support at that time. Where today there is support. I know countless people whose lives JJ has saved, even down to the baby that almost drowned in the pool with no side effects. Now you want to take a guy like that and question his fees per month because he wants to increase it by 67 Rand per household? Because he's asking, why not negotiate that price rather than trying to cut it? And by the way, trying to cut it to half. If this was such a big issue, I really think you should have put it to the test and put it to a vote and see how people actually feel. There are other areas that we can see that should be rather considered. But something like this, I think it's very personal to people, and I think you should have listened to them rather. But what I do not appreciate from this particular directive is that you put the whole of Pekinwood at risk because you didn't have a backup plan. You didn't have a company, and now you gave notice to somebody. And let me be clear, it was 2 weeks notice, not a month. 2 weeks. I think that was very unreasonable, to be honest with you. I think it was completely unreasonable. And I'm asking if you could please consider the director removing himself from the situation and allowing it to go to the AGM for a vote and having a discussion correctly and put into the forum. I think that is because it's such a hot, contentious issue. Let's take it away from the HOA and let's put it to a proper vote. And yes, get comparative quotes and let's see how it compares, and then we could address it. And again, I think put the topic to the AGM and let my people make their own decisions for themselves. But to put noticing, as you've heard, many people were not happy about it, and I think the tribe has spoken. Please, can we find a way to address this and put this onto the AGM minutes or roster for us to handle and manage? Thank you for your time, and I hope we can find a working solution.